All right, so Canvas says 2.1 through 2.4, but it's actually just 2.1 through 2.3. So it's everything that the quiz was on and 2.3, which is the long division and synthetic division stuff. My point, am I going? So let's take a look at number 5. So we have to use the leading coefficient test to determine the end behavior of the polynomial function, find the number of terms, X-intercept, multiplicity, Y-intercept, and graph the function. So we can start by finding our end behavior. We look at our highest degree term, which would be x to the 4th power. So is it even or odd, positive or negative? It's even and positive, so what are our arrows going to do? Up and up. Next, we want to find our zeros so we know where we cross the x-axis. So I have x to the 4th power minus 6x cubed minus 2x squared plus 12x. Do I have anything in common in all of these terms?
X.
So I can take out an x. And then I'm left with x cubed minus 6x squared minus 2x plus 12. I have 4 terms, so how do you think I should factor this? Grouping.
Should you not do grouping?
All right, so we group the first 2, group the second 2. What do I have in common in my first group? An x squared. So I'm going to take out an x squared. That x is just going to hang outside along for the ride. So x squared, and then I'm left with what once I take out that x squared?
X and -6.
So x minus 6. What can I take out in my second group? -2. And then I'm left with x minus 6 again, which is perfect because that's exactly what I wanted. Had to make these inside parentheses the same.
Wait, so you're going to have to do 5 answers? No.
4. This exponent up here, that 4 tells us we're going to have 4 answers. So I have x. What's going to go into my first parentheses? X squared minus 2. And then in my second parentheses, x minus 6. And then once I have everything factored, I can set each piece equal to 0. So x is equal to 0. X squared minus 2 is equal to 0. X minus 6 is equal to 0. So x is equal to 0 is already 1, 0. So then I can just solve the next one. I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So x squared is equal to 2. Take the square root. So x is equal to what? Plus or minus square root 2. And then I have x is equal to positive 6. So these are my 4 answers. So on my graph, I'm going to put a point at each of these. I have 0, positive square root 2, which is in between 1 and 2, so about here, and negative, so about there, kind of ish. And square root, or just 6. So I'm going to go to 6 and put a point there. Do I have any multiplicity? Multiplicity, none. Because nothing repeats. So at each of my points, I'm going to go through. So I can put my arrows. I'm going to go up and up. So out of the farthest point to the left, I go up. Farthest point to the right, I go up. And then each one of my points, I'm going to go through. So I go through, 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 and through.
How does this?
So multiplicity is if our solutions repeat. So here we only have like one of each term, so we have no multiplicity. If multiplicity is odd, then we go through. If multiplicity is even, we touch and turn. So because we only have one of each of these numbers, it would be odd because 1 is odd, so we go through all of our points. I think the last one was the Y-intercept. What's our Y-intercept? 0, 0, 0.
On the test, like on the quiz,
So, number 4. Which term are we looking at to determine our end behavior? 2, x cubed. So it's odd, because we're looking at the degree to tell us if it's even or odd. and it's positive. So what's our end behavior going to be?
Down and
Down,
up.
then up. And then let's find our zeros. So I have 3x. I'm going to write it in standard form just so it's a little bit easier to solve. So 2x cubed plus 3x. I can take out an x, so I have 2x squared plus 3. What should I do next? Set each piece equal to 0. So x is equal to 0. 2x squared plus 3 is equal to 0.
Now, let me ask you a question now. That's
Right, so x squared is equal to negative 3 over 2, because I subtract 3, then divide. Square root. Can I get a square root under, can I get a negative under my square root? No. So this is not a real solution, so we don't touch the x-axis here.
so how would we graph this? We just graph from the 0?
So I only cross the x-axis at 0. It's an x cubed graph, so I know that it's going to have that like x cubed graph type of shape. So it'll kind of look like this-ish, something like that. Do I have multiplicity? No multiplicity. So at 0, am I going to touch and turn or go through? I go through. And what's my y-intercept? 0, 0. Because I plug in 0 for x, and I would get 0 for y. All right, let's take a look at number 6. All right, so this one is kind of the same thing. It's just written a little bit different than we've seen. So we have to determine our end behavior and number of turns. So that's just like how many zeros we would have, and our x-intercepts and multiplicity. So this is like already factored for us. But how many x's total do I have here? 4. So this would be like an x to the 4th power graph. Do any of my x's have a negative in front of it? No. So it's a positive x to the 4th graph, x to the 4th power graph. So what would my end behavior be? Up and up. To find my zeros, I could just set each piece equal to 0. So x minus 2 is equal to 0. X plus 1 is equal to 0. X plus 2 is equal to 0. And technically this here is 2x plus 2. So x plus 2 is equal to 0 again. Because it's squared, I have 2 of them. So I get x is equal to 2. X is equal to negative 1. X is equal to negative 2. And x is equal to negative 2.
So this type of problem, would they ever ask you to get the
Do I have any multiplicity?
Yeah.
Where?
Negative 2.
So I have multiplicity
Negative 2.
of 2
2 and 2.
at negative 2. And at 2, at positive 2, so back over here, am I going to touch and turn or go through? Go through. What about at negative 1? I go through. And then I touch and turn at the one with multiplicity. All right, let's find our y-intercept too. So to find the y-intercept, we plug in 0 for x. So it would be 0 minus 2, 0 plus 1, 0 plus 2 squared. So this would be negative 2 times 1 times 2 squared. So negative 2 times 1 times 4, which would be negative 8. So how would we write our y-intercept? 0, negative 8. All right, 7's the same type of stuff. We have to find the end behavior, x-intercepts, y-intercept, domain, range, and graph. So which term is going to help us find the end behavior?
Wait, we didn't have to graph 6.
So this determines our end behavior. So what's our end behavior going to be?
2 rows going down.
Down and down, because it's negative and even. Now, this is a quadratic, because it's x squared. So I could find my vertex It doesn't ask me to, just the X-intercepts, so I'll just find the X-intercepts. To do that, I have to factor. How would I factor this?
Multiply 1 by -3.
So 1 times -3 would be -3. What are two factors of -3 that add to -2? -3 and +1, so x minus 3, x plus 1. Divide both of these by -3. So I get x plus 1 and -3x plus 1. So I can set each of these equal to 0. So x is equal to -1 and x is equal to 1/3.
Why do you divide both? I thought you only divide one by -3 or you divide both?
Both.
Okay.
What's my y-intercept? My y-intercept would be 1, so as a point, 0, 1. So we can graph that. I go to the left to -1, to the right 1/3, and my y-intercept would be 0, 1, so I go up 1. And then I know I'm going down and down. Do I have any multiplicity?
No.
Nope. So I just go through and through.
And your domain.
What's my domain? All real numbers, so -infinity to infinity, or you could write all real numbers. How do we know that 1 is the highest point in our graph? Do we know it's the max?
Yeah.
Remember, our vertex is at the max.
Oh, that thing?
So we'd have to find the vertex. So -b over 2a. So that would be 2 over 2 times 3, which would be 1/3. This is our x in our vertex. We have to find the y because that'll give us the range. So plug in 1/3. This is good practice. Minus 2 times 1/3 plus 1. So 1/3 squared would be 1 over 9 times -3 would be -3 over 9, so -1/3 minus 2/3. Oh, it should be negative. Yeah, this should be negative. So this becomes plus 2/3 plus 1. So I could say plus 3 over 3, just so everything has the same denominator. So this would be 4 over 3.
Are the answers posted on Canvas?
They will be. I worked them all out. I just have to upload it. So my range goes to 4/3. Do I have a parentheses or bracket? Bracket. Be careful when writing the range. If it opens down, it starts with -infinity. So you always start with the smallest number, then go to the largest. So if it opens up, you would start with the number, then it goes to infinity. If it opens down, you start with -infinity, then it goes to the number. That was a common mistake on the quiz. So our graph technically goes like this, and then comes back down and hits the y. So number 12, we have to use synthetic division and the remainder theorem to find the indicated function value. So what goes on the outside? -3. And on the inside? Awesome. Always double check, make sure you're not missing anything. If we start with x to the cubed, we should have 4 numbers in our box. So drop down the 4, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply. 56 times 3 would be 168. -168. And then this would be -145. So -145 is our answer. So for 10, what goes outside the box? -2, and inside 1, -3, -7, 1, -1, and 18. So drop down the 1, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add. This would be +9, -18, 0. So is x plus 2 a factor? Yes. So if this said, use the rational zero test to find the factors. And we have x cubed plus 2x squared minus 5x minus 6. Where do we start?
6 is the p, x is cubed.
Right. So last over first. So what are some factors of 6? 1, 2, 3, and 6. And factors of our leading coefficient? 1. Plus or minus. So what do you want to try first? Let's try 1. What's going to go inside of our box? 1, 2, -5, and -6. So drop down the 1, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply. Doesn't work. So let's try something else. Any other suggestions? What do you think? Let's try 2. So 2 times 1 would be 2, 4, 8, 3, 6. It works. Good job, Michael. So 2 is one of our zeros, so x is equal to 2. It's one of them. I could do the rational zero test again, but from here I have x squared plus 4x plus 3. So do I have two factors of 3 to add to 4? 3 and 1. So that would be x plus 1, x plus 3 equals 0. So x is equal to what? -1 and -3. So adding to my list up here, of x is equal to 2, and -1 and -3. So these are all my real zeros. All right, so again, we're using the rational zero test, and let's say we had x cubed minus 7x plus 6. So start with our factors of our last. So what are factors of 6? 1, 6, 2, and 3, and that's plus or minus for all of those. And then factors of our leading coefficient are just plus or minus 1. Yeah. Well, let's test it. But it's x cubed.
Oh. What would you do if you had multiple factors for your denominator?
Then it would be like fractions, because it would, like right now, our denominator is just 1, so it's like 1 over 1, which is just 1, 6 over 1, so it ends up being whole numbers. But let's say I had 2, then I would have 1 over 2 that I had to try as one of my possible answers. But our leading coefficient's always going to be 1, so you won't have to deal with fractions. You're welcome. All right, so what do you want to try first? 1. We can try whatever number we wanted first, so let's try 1. What's going to go in our box? 1, 0, -7, and 6, because we're missing an x squared. So we have to put in there a 0 x squared. So 1, 0, -7, and 6. So drop down the 1, multiply, add, multiply. This is 1, -6, -6, and 0. So it works. So x is equal to 1 is one of our answers.
Yes.
What can I do to find another answer?
X squared plus x minus 6.
x squared plus x minus 6. I can just factor this. So do I have two factors of negative 6 that add to positive 1? 3 and negative 2. So I have x plus 3, x minus 2. Set them both equal to 0. So x is equal to negative 3 and x is equal to 2. So in addition to one that I just found here, I have negative 3 and 2. So these are all of my zeros. All right, so let's say that we didn't know how to factor this. So we're going to use our quadratic formula. So what's A? Yes. 1. What's B? C? So plug it into our quadratic formula. We have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared. So that would just be 1 squared. Minus 4 times 1 times negative 6 over 2 times a. So negative 1 plus or minus the square root of, this would be 1 plus 24, so 25 over 2. This would be 5 over 2. So I'm going to split it up. Because it's a whole number, I can simplify. So negative 1 plus 5 over 2, negative 1 minus 5 over 2. So this would be 4 over 2 and negative 6 over 2. So 2 and negative 3. Yeah, which is what we found when we factored it here. All right, let's take a look at number 9. So we have to divide using long division. Outside of our box is going to be 3x minus 4. Inside is 12x cubed minus 10x squared minus 17x plus 12. So first thing we need to do is divide 12x cubed by 3x. That leaves us with 4x squared. Then whatever we write on the top, we multiply by the outside, everything on the outside. So this would be 12x cubed. 4x squared times negative 4 would be negative 16x squared. And then what do I have to do? Change the sign. So this becomes negative, this becomes positive. So this will cancel. Add them together. Negative 10x squared plus 16x squared is 6x squared. Then we do all the same steps again. Divide by 3x. So 6x squared divided by 3x would be 2x. Yeah, 2x. Then we multiply. So this would be 6x squared minus 8x. What do I have to do next? Change the sign. So minus plus, this cancels. Add them together. Negative 17x plus 8x. Negative what? Negative 9x. Divide negative 9x by 3x, and that gives us negative 3. Multiply what's on top with what's out front. So negative 9x plus 12. Change the signs. Plus, minus, this cancels. 12 minus 12 is 0, so no remainder. So this would be our answer. 4x squared plus 2x minus 3.
Oh, that was the one I was asking about.
Perfect. So what's going to go outside my box? Well, it's x minus 6, so we change the sign to put 6 outside the box. I think this one was just asking to check x minus 6, because if you did synthetic division and did x plus 2, the question up here, it still doesn't work. But
Yeah, that's what I did both of them because I was confused with the directions up top, but then I figured out that.
what goes inside of our box? 1.
0, 0, 0, 12.
1, 0, 0, 0, 1296. Because we have to put a 0x cubed, 0x squared, 0x, and then our constant. So drop down the 1. This would be 1, 6, 6, 36, 36, 1, 2, 16, I think. 216 times 6 is 1296, and then we just add these together, which it's not going to be 0, so then here we know that it's not a factor. So like this has to be 0 for it to be a factor, but it's not, because it's not. Yes?
So I was looking at the 2.3 notes, and I was looking at the rational.
Alright, so it's a factor of the polynomial if x plus 2 is a factor and use synthetic division. So we have to make sure this is in standard form, so 6x cubed plus 10x squared plus x plus 10. And we're using synthetic division to check and see if x plus 2 is a factor. So what goes on the outside? Negative 2, since it's written like this, we have to change it. So negative 2 goes on the outside. What goes on the inside? 6, 10, 1, and 10. Always double check and make sure you're not missing any terms. If we start with x cubed, you're going to have 4 numbers in your box. So it's always like 1 more than your highest degree. So drop down the 6, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add.
Why don't you make it into a smiley face?
Because it's happy that it goes
She's
in.
been doing this since at least I never noticed that.
So is x plus 2 a factor?
Yes.
Yes. And then we could see if it factors more. So 6x squared minus 2x plus 5.
Or we left it like that. Because last time I kept factoring and kept getting it wrong.
Depends on what the question asks. So if it asks for all the factors, you have to make sure you can't factor it more. So always double check the question. No, but we're going to see if it factors more. So multiply the first and last, we get 30. Do we have 2 factors of 30 that add to negative 2? No. So it doesn't factor anymore. So our only factor, our only real solution would be this. So our only factor. So our quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So negative 2 becomes a positive 2, plus or minus 4, minus 4 times a times c over 2 times a. So 2 plus or minus 4 times 6 times 5, that would be 120. And 4 minus 120 would be negative 116 over 12. So because we get a negative in under our square root, it's not a real solution. Right, 13. So we have to solve given that 1 is a root, so we have to find the other roots. So 1 is a root is just saying like x is equal to 1. So let's do synthetic division. So 1 goes on the outside, 12, negative 25, 16, and negative 3 goes on the inside. Drop it down, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add. So now I have 12x squared minus 13x plus 3. And then we can factor this. How would I factor?
Times 3.
12 times 3. So 12 times 3 is 36. Do I have 2 factors of 36 to add to 13?
9 and 4.
9 and 4. Negative 9 and negative 4. So x minus 9, x minus 4. What can I not forget to do? Divide by 12. Simplify if we can. So this would become 3 over 4. So 4x minus 3. And then this one would become 1 over 3. So 3x minus 1. set each of them equal to 0, so x is equal to 3/4 and x is equal to 1/3. So if this question said list all the roots or list all the zeros or list all the solutions, we would say x is equal to 1 because that was given to us, 3/4 and 1/3. So for 14, we've got to put it in the right order. So we have x cubed plus 3x squared minus 4x minus 12. And we have to use synthetic division to find the roots, given that x is equal to -3 is a root. So we're dividing it by -3. So we have 1, 3, -4, and -12 in our box. Drop down the 1, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, we get 0. And then from here, this is 1x squared plus 0x minus 4. So this would just be x squared minus 4, which I could factor, but I don't need to. I could just set it equal to 0 to find the other roots. Add 4 to both sides. X squared is equal to 4. Take the square root. So what's x equal to? Plus or minus 2. So in addition to x is equal to -3, my other roots are 2 and -2. Okay, so if I had x to the 4th power plus 2x cubed minus 3x squared minus 8x minus 4. And this says list all the possible zeros using the rational zero test.
That wasn't on the review now?
No.
So first you find the factors of -4.
Which would be?
1 and -4. Or yeah, plus and minus, sorry. 1, 4, and 2, yeah.
And then
This is rational zero?
this is the rational zero test.
This is on the test?
Yes. So I list all my factors of 4, put that on top, then I list all my factors of the leading coefficient, which my leading coefficient here is what?
1.
1. So it would just be plus or minus 1.
Is it always going to be 1?
Yes. It'll always be 1. Because if it wasn't, you'd be working with fractions, and it's not 1. So you're welcome. It'll always be 1. But it is possible, like in life, for it not to be 1, and you can still do the rational zero test. You would just be multiplying and adding fractions.
Would the bottom number always be 1?
Yes. All right, so what do you want to try first?
1.
Let's try 1. What's going to go inside my box?
1, 2, -3, -8, and 4.
Yep, all my coefficients go inside the box, and I want to try 1 first. So I drop down the 1, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply. It doesn't work. So 1 doesn't work. Let's go back to our possibilities. What should I try next? Let's try -1. -1. Multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply. This would be 4, add, -4, multiply, +4, add, we get 0. So -1 works. So I'm going to list all my solutions here. So x is equal to -1 is one of my solutions. Now I'm going to use my coefficients of the answer that I just got and break that down even more. So since I started with x to the 4th power, this is going to be x cubed plus 1x squared minus 4x minus 4. I can do the rational zero test again and list my p over q using this number, but it's 4 also. So I have the same possibilities here. So what do you want to try?
Don't you just factor that? Like grouping it?
Yeah, we could factor it by grouping. Either way. Do you want to factor by grouping, or you want to do the rational zero test again?
Oh, you can.
Let's group it.
No, wait, you can do that.
Yeah, you can. If you can factor this, however you want, factor it, so you don't have to keep guessing and checking. So I have x cubed plus x squared minus 4x minus 4. So I'm going to group the first two, group the second two. What comes out of my first group? X squared, and what am I left with? X plus 1. What comes out of my second group? Negative 4. What am I left with? X plus 1. So in my first parentheses here, what am I going to put? X squared minus 4. And in my second parentheses, x plus 1. So from here, this is factored, so I just set each piece equal to 0. So x squared minus 4 is equal to 0. I can add 4 to both sides. X squared is equal to 4. Take the square root, so what's x going to be equal to? Plus or minus 2. So I'm going to add those to my list here. I have a positive 2 and a negative 2. And then I can solve for the next one too. So I have x plus 1 is equal to 0. Subtract 1 on both sides. X is equal to negative 1. So I'm going to add that one to my list too.
So you should put it twice?
Yeah.
You would put negative 1 twice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it'll help you see, like, I have x to the 4th power. I'm going to have 4 answers. So these are all 4 of my answers.
Alright.
Oh, so anytime.
All right, so another rational zero test. If I have x cubed plus 2x squared minus 3x minus 6. So what are all my factors of 6?
1, 2, 3, 6.
So plus or minus 1, 2, 3, and 6. And then all my factors of my leading coefficient would just be plus or minus 1. So what should I try first? Let's try 1. So in my box I have 1, 2, negative 3, and negative 6. Drop down the 1, multiply, add, multiply, 0, not going to work. So what else can we try? Let's try negative 1. Multiply, add, multiply, negative 1, add, not going to work. What else can we try? Let's try 2. Multiply, 2, 4, 8, 3 minus 8, 8 minus 3 would be 5, 10, doesn't work. Let's try negative 2. So negative 2, this would be 0, multiply, 0, add, negative 3, 6, 0. So negative 2 works. So one of my solutions is going to be negative 2. So next I have x squared plus, I'm just going to put 0x even though we don't have to, just because I want to use the quadratic for this one, minus 3.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. So from here, let's say I didn't know how to factor it. So I'm going to use the quadratic formula. Anybody remember what the quadratic formula is?
It would be plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a.
Awesome. So what's my a?
1.
What's my b? And what's my c? So we plug all of that in. So I have 0 plus or minus the square root of 0 minus 4 times 1 times negative 3 over 2 times 1. So this would be plus or minus square root of 12 over 2 times 1, which is 2. I can simplify this. Square root of 12 simplifies. What are my factors of 12? 3 and 4. And 4 breaks down into 2 and 2. So I have a group of 2's. So what comes outside? 2. And then what stays inside? 3. So this would be 2 square root 3 over 2. And then can I simplify this? The 2's cancel. So I have plus or minus square root 3. So this is just an example of the quadratic. From here, let me change the color. From here, I could have said this was x squared minus 3 because you don't need that 0x there. I set this equal to 0, add 3 on both sides, so x squared is equal to 3. Take the square root, x is equal to plus or minus square root 3. So I could have solved it that way, but I'm just showing you. If you don't see that it factors, you can always do the quadratic and you'll get the same answer. It'll just be more work, but you'll get the same answer. We add that to, so square root 3 and negative square root 3. So these would be all of our roots here.
And then